I never planned on falling in love with him that night. Hell, I didn't even plan on remembering it. The whole point was to drink myself numb, to stop thinking, to blur out the weight of a life that felt too heavy for one man to carry. And yet, there he was sitting across from me with a smile that wasn't perfect but somehow stripped me bare. Right there in the middle of a crowded bar in downtown Chicago. "God, you look like shit," he said, raising his glass with that teasing grin of his. I should have been offended. Instead, I laughed. Maybe because he was right. Maybe because no one had ever said it so honestly. Without judgment. Without pity. That was Liam. Always the kind of guy who could take your broken pieces and make them feel less sharp. Less dangerous. The rain hammered outside against the bar windows. Streaks of neon lights dripping down the glass like watercolor paint. Inside, the smell of whiskey and old wood wrapped around me like a memory I couldn't place. I told myself I was here for just one drink. Maybe two. But the truth. I was here because he asked me. And whenever Liam asked, I came. It had been 6 months since I last saw him. And time hadn't dulled anything. Not the way my chest tightened when he laughed. Not the way my skin burned when his hand brushed mine. Even by accident. 6 months hadn't changed the fact that I wanted him so much it scared the hell out of me. But Liam was straight. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. And me. I was the idiot who thought he could drown his heart in whiskey and forget. "Ethan," Liam said, leaning forward, his voice dropping low. "Tell me why you're really here tonight. Because I don't believe for a second it's just for the drinks." I froze, glass halfway to my lips. He always did this, saw right through me, cut through the layers I built to protect myself. And that night, with the rain and the whiskey and the ache in my chest, I wasn't sure I had the strength to lie. "I just needed to see you," I whispered, before I could stop myself. The words hung between us, heavier than the storm outside. Liam's smile faltered, and for the first time that night, his eyes softened in a way I didn't understand. And that's when everything started to change. I met Liam 2 years ago, in the most unromantic way possibly, at a friend's disastrous house party in Brooklyn. I was standing in the kitchen, clutching a beer I didn't even like, trying not to die of boredom. And then he walked in, spilling a drink on his shirt, cursing under his breath, and laughing at himself all in the same breath. "Hell of an entrance," I muttered, not even sure he heard me. But he did. He turned, eyes locking with mine, and grinned like we'd already known each other forever. From that night on, Liam had been a storm in my carefully ordered life. He was everything I wasn't, loud where I was quiet, brave where I was cautious, reckless where I was afraid. And I hated him for it. I hated the way he made me feel alive. Like suddenly I wasn't just existing but actually living. And I hated even more that I couldn't stop wanting him. So I tried to bury it. Tried to tell myself it was nothing. Just a crush. Just a passing thing. I dated other guys. Forced myself to smile. To pretend. But no one ever felt like Liam. No one ever made me laugh like he did. Or look at me like I mattered. And now, here we were 2 years later, sitting in a bar, with my heart screaming the truth I could no longer keep quiet. "You needed to see me," Liam repeated slowly, as if testing the words. His thumb tapped the side of his glass, his eyes searching mine. "Ethan, are you saying what I think you're saying?" My chest tightened. This was the moment I had avoided for so long. The line I wasn't supposed to cross. Because if I said it, if I laid myself bare, there was no going back. I'd either lose him forever or, I don't know. I admitted, my voice breaking. "All I know is, when you're not around, everything feels empty. And when you are, it's worse. Because I want something I can't have." Silence. The kind that stretches so long you can hear your own heartbeat pounding in your ears. Then Liam exhaled, slow and heavy. You really think you can't have me? I blinked, stunned. You're not. Not what? He cut in. His gaze didn't waver. Not like you. Not interested. He leaned closer. So close I could smell the faint trace of his cologne mixed with whiskey. Ethan, do you have any idea how many nights I've sat up thinking about you? The room tilted. My brain scrambled to make sense of his words, but my body understood first the warmth flooding my chest. The sudden rush of air that felt like freedom and fear all at once. You, what? I whispered. I thought I was crazy. Liam admitted, his voice trembling. Because I've never felt this way about a guy before. But with you, it's different. It's always been different. I stared at him, the world narrowing to just his face, his eyes, the truth spilling out like lightning cracking open the night. And in that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The rain kept falling outside, relentless. Inside, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. Liam reached across the table, his fingers brushing against mine. It wasn't much, just a touch, but it was enough to set my whole body on fire. I don't want to run from this anymore, he said softly. Do you? I should have been scared. Maybe I was. But more than anything, I felt relief. Like after years of holding my breath, I could finally exhale. No. I breathed. I don't. And just like that, the space between us collapsed. That was the beginning. The moment the lines blurred, the rules broke, and everything I thought I knew about love, about myself, shattered and remade into something new. But beginnings are never easy. And neither was ours. The first time Liam's hand covered mine, I swear my heart stopped. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even a hug. But the weight of his palm pressing down, the warmth seeping into my skin, felt like everything I had been starving for. And yet, as the seconds passed, panic clawed its way up my throat. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not now. Not when the world was still watching. My eyes darted around the bar. But no one cared. No one noticed. We were invisible, just two guys nursing drinks in a dark corner. Still, fear gnawed at me. Liam, I said, my voice low. Do you know what this means? Yeah. He whispered back, eyes locked on mine. It means I'm done lying to myself. The storm outside roared louder, thunder rattling the glass, like the universe was punctuating his words. He didn't flinch. He just held on tighter. Later that night, after too many whiskeys and too many truths, we found ourselves outside, standing beneath the awning while the rain poured down in sheets. The city smelled like wet asphalt and possibility. My head spun not from the alcohol, but from him. Always him. You should probably call an Uber, I muttered, shoving my hands deep into my jacket pockets. He smirked. Or I could walk you home. I rolled my eyes. It's a 30-minute walk in the rain. Exactly. His grin widened. Perfect excuse. That was Liam turning every inconvenience into adventure. I wanted to say no, to protect myself, to keep the line from blurring any further. But my body betrayed me, feet already moving beside his. The rain drenched us within minutes, plastering his blonde hair to his forehead, soaking his shirt until it clung to him like a second skin. He laughed, wild and unrestrained, throwing his head back as if the storm belonged to him. And me, I couldn't stop staring. Why are you looking at me like that? He asked suddenly, catching me off guard. Like what? I shot back too quickly. Like I'm the only thing keeping you alive. I froze, breath caught in my chest. He wasn't wrong. And for once, I didn't deny it. Because you are. I admitted softly, His smile faded, replaced by something rawer, deeper. He stopped walking, rain dripping down his face, and for a moment, the city disappeared. It was just us, standing on an empty Chicago street, hearts pounding louder than the thunder. Then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate, messy, the kind of kiss that tasted like whiskey and rain and years of unsaid words. His hands cupped my face, pulling me closer as if afraid I'd disappear. My body pressed into his, the world spinning, and for the first time in forever, I felt whole. When we finally pulled apart, gasping for air, he rested his forehead against mine. "Tell me I'm not crazy," he whispered. "You're crazy," I said, smiling through the tremor in my voice. "But so am I." The days that followed blurred into something I still struggle to put into words. We didn't call it dating, not yet. We didn't call it anything. But every night, we found our way back to each other. Sometimes it was another bar. Sometimes his apartment. Sometimes mine. The excuses varied. But the truth was always the same: we couldn't stay away. There was a sweetness to those nights. A fragile intimacy that felt almost stolen. Cooking breakfast together in his tiny kitchen. Falling asleep on his couch halfway through some bad movie. Whispering secrets in the dark. Afraid the world might hear. But beneath the sweetness, a shadow lingered. Because love, especially love like ours, was never just love. It was fear. It was risk. It was the knowledge that the same touch that made me feel alive could also burn everything down. It started small. The hesitation in his voice when his roommate came home unexpectedly. The way he pulled away in public, as if every glance was a loaded gun. One night, as we lay tangled in his sheets, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me. "What are we doing, Liam?" He stiffened beside me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what is this?" I turned to face him, heart hammering. Are we together? Or am I just a distraction until you figure yourself out?" The silence stretched. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting to the ceiling as if the answer was written there. "Ethan," his voice cracked. "I don't know." The words sliced through me sharper than any blade. I pushed back the ache in my chest, forcing myself to breathe. "That's not good enough." "I'm trying," he said, frustration lacing his tone. "I've never done this before. I don't even know how to explain it to myself, let alone anyone else." "And what about me?" My voice rose. "Do you know what it's like to be somebody's maybe? To wake up every day wondering if today's the day you'll decide I'm just an experiment?" His jaw tightened. "You think that's what you are to me? An experiment?" "I don't know what I am to you." The words ripped out of me, louder than I meant. My chest heaved, my throat burning. "All I know is I love you, Liam. And I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending I don't." The room went dead quiet. My confession hung in the air, raw and irreversible. Liam stared at me, eyes wide, lips parted as if searching for the right words but finding none. And then, without a word, he got up and walked out of the room. The sound of the door closing behind him was the loudest silence I had ever heard. The next 3 days were hell. I didn't hear from him. Not a call. Not a text. Nothing. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest lurched, only to collapse when it wasn't him. I barely ate, barely slept. Work became a blur of motions I couldn't remember. By the 4th night, I convinced myself it was over, that I had ruined everything with 3 stupid words I couldn't take back. And then showed up. I found him on my doorstep at midnight, rain-soaked and trembling, just like the night we kissed. His eyes were red, his hands shaking as he shoved them into his jacket pockets. "Ethan," he said, his voice breaking. I can't do this without you. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much he'd hurt me, how much those 3 days had shredded me inside out. But all I did was pull him into my arms. Because despite everything, couldn't let him go. That night, as we lay in the dark, he finally spoke. When you told me you loved me, he whispered. I panicked. Not because I didn't feel the same, but because I did. And it scared the hell out of me. I turned to face him, my hand brushing against his. Then say it. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening even in the shadows. I love you, Ethan. The words were shaky, imperfect, but they were real, and they were enough. For a while, love was enough. We learned to build a world in stolen hours and quiet corners, piecing together happiness wherever we could find it. But the cracks were still there. Cracks made of fear, of secrets, of the weight of a society that wasn't ready for us. And deep down, I knew the hardest part of our story hadn't even begun. For weeks, things felt almost normal. Too normal, maybe. Liam and I carved out a private universe, one that thrived on late-night takeout, inside jokes, and the soft silence of holding each other when the city outside refused to sleep. But every universe has borders, and ours was fragile. Whenever his phone buzzed, he'd flinch. Whenever his brother called, he'd step into another room. And whenever we brushed against each other in public, he'd pull back like the world might catch fire if he lingered too long. I told myself I could live with it, that stolen moments were better than no moments at all. But deep down, I knew it wasn't sustainable. The truth was waiting for us, like a storm on the horizon. Came one Sunday afternoon. We were in his apartment, sprawled across his couch with pizza boxes littering the coffee table. The Bears game played on the TV, though neither of us was watching. Liam's head rested on my shoulder, his hand absent-mindedly tracing circles on my thigh. For a while, I let myself believe this was enough, that this was our forever. Then his phone rang. The screen lit up, Dad. Liam jerked upright like he'd been burned. He stared at the phone, at the name, and in a single second, the walls slammed back into place. Don't answer, I said gently. I have to. His voice was tight, almost strangled. He stood, pacing the room before swiping to accept the call. Hey, Dad. I tried not to listen. I tried to focus on the TV, on the crumbs at my feet, on anything but the sound of his voice. But I couldn't help it. Yeah, work's fine. No girlfriend. I told you. I'm too busy for that. The words cut deeper than I expected. When he hung up, silence filled the room. He wouldn't look at me. Too busy for a girlfriend. I asked quietly, Ethan, don't. I stood, my chest tight. Don't tell me it's nothing. Don't tell me it doesn't matter. Because it does. His jaw clenched. You don't understand. Then help me. I pleaded. Help me understand. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. My family, they're not like yours. My dada's old school, conservative as hell. If he knew about us, his voice faltered. He'd cut me off. Maybe worse. I stepped closer, desperate to bridge the distance. Do you really think hiding us forever is the answer? His eyes finally met mine, filled with fear. I don't know what the answer is, but I know I can't lose my family. And just like that, the storm arrived. The following weeks were a blur of arguments and silences. Some nights, Liam would hold me like he never wanted to let go. Other nights, he'd pull away so fast it felt like he was erasing me. The push and pull shredded me, left me dangling between hope and despair. One night, after another fight, I found myself wandering the city streets alone. The wind was sharp, the kind that cuts through your jacket no matter how tight you wrap it. I ended up outside the same bar where it all began. Inside, the air smelled of whiskey and regret. I sat at the counter, ordered a drink, and wondered how the hell I got here. Rough night. The bartender asked. You could say that. Love trouble. I laughed bitterly. Aren't they all? The bartender gave me a sympathetic nod and moved on. I stared into my glass, searching for answers that weren't there. What was I doing? Loving a man who couldn't even say my name out loud, who hid me like I was something to be ashamed of. Was I really that desperate? And yet, couldn't walk away. Because every time I thought about leaving, I remembered the way Liam's hand fit perfectly in mine. The way his laugh filled a room. The way he kissed me like I was the only person who had ever mattered. Love is a cruel thing. It gives you wings and chains in the same breath. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. It was a Saturday. Liam had invited me to a barbecue his brother was hosting. Just friends, he said. No one'll think twice if you're there. I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect myself from the inevitable hurt. But a part of me stupid, hopeful wanted to believe him. The backyard buzzed with laughter. Beer bottles clinking. Kids running through sprinklers. I stood awkwardly near the grill, trying to blend in, trying not to look like the secret I was. Liam drifted between groups, charming everyone with that easy smile of his. When our eyes met across the yard, my chest ached with longing. But then his cousin nudged him, asking about that cute girl from his office. And Liam laughed it off, saying, yeah, she's nice. Felt like a slap. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door before the tears spilled over. I stared at my reflection, hating myself for caring so much, for being so weak. When I finally came out, Liam was waiting by the side of the house, away from the crowd. His face was pale, his eyes guilty. Ethan, I don't. My voice shook, but I forced it steady. Don't say you're sorry. Don't say you didn't mean it. Because you did. He reached for me, but I stepped back. You don't get it, do you? I can't keep being your secret. I can't keep standing in the shadows while you play straight for everyone else. His hands trembled. Please, just give me time. I've given you time. I snapped. I've given you everything. And all you've given me is pain. The words tasted like poison. But they were true. For the first time, Liam didn't fight back. He just stood there, broken. As I turned and walked away, the days that followed were emptier than I imagined. I blocked his number, deleted our photos, tried to convince myself I was free. But freedom felt like suffocation. Every corner of the city reminded me of him. Every quiet moment screamed his name. One night, I dreamed of him, of that first kiss in the rain, of his arms wrapped around me, of the way he whispered, I love you, like it was both a promise and a prayer. I woke up gasping, the ache in my chest unbearable. Maybe I should have let go. Maybe I should have moved on. But love doesn't obey logic. It lingers, festers, it waits. And deep down, I knew our story wasn't over. Because the truth, you don't survive a storm like Liam and come out unchanged. You either drown, or you learn how to breathe underwater. The silence after Liam was gone was deafening. It wasn't the kind of silence that came from being alone in your apartment. The faint hum of the refrigerator or the distant honk of traffic outside. This was the silence of absence, of a missing heartbeat that used to sync with mine. I told myself I'd be okay, that I'd move on like I had before, like I'd done with every other man who'd slipped through my fingers. But the truth was, Liam wasn't like the others. He was stitched into my every thought. into the rhythm of my days. And ripping him out felt like tearing skin from bone. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word of our last fight until my chest ached. The anger, the disappointment, the sheer exhaustion in my voice yet haunted me. And beneath all of it was the truth I couldn't bury. I still loved him. I hated myself for it. 2 weeks passed. My friends noticed the change. "You're quieter than usual," Mark said one night at dinner, nudging me with his elbow. He meant well, but his concern only made me shrink further into myself. "I'm fine." I lied. But I wasn't. I skipped parties, ignored texts. I even stopped writing, something I'd always done to process the chaos inside me. The words wouldn't come. Nothing did. Until one night, sitting in my dark apartment, I opened my laptop and typed 3 words into a blank document. "I miss him." The dam broke. For hours, I poured everything onto the page: the love, the anger, the fear, the way his smile lit up a room, the way his absence hollowed me out. I wrote until my fingers ached, until my tears blurred the screen. By the time I stopped, the sun was rising, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. Maybe, I thought, this was the beginning of letting go. But letting go isn't linear. It's messy. Some days, I felt strong, convinced I was finally moving forward. Other days, a song on the radio or a face in the crowd would send me spiraling back into the ache of missing him. One night, drunk on cheap wine and loneliness, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. There he was, grinning with pizza sauce on his cheek, his arm draped around me like it belonged there. There he was, asleep on my couch, hair sticking up in every direction, looking so unbearably human that I wanted to reach through the screen and touch him. I almost called, almost texted, but I stopped myself, because I knew if I opened that door, I'd fall back into the same cycle, and I couldn't survive losing him again. Then came the phone call. It was late on a Thursday, and I was dozing on the couch when my phone buzzed. Liam's name lit up the screen. My heart stopped. For a long moment, I just stared at it, my hand trembling. Answering meant reopening wounds. Ignoring meant living with the what if. Against my better judgment, I swiped to accept. "Ethan." His voice cracked through the line, raw and desperate. I swallowed hard. "What do you want, Liam?" There was silence on the other end, broken only by his shaky breath. I messed up." I closed my eyes. "Yeah, you did. I can't sleep, can't eat. Everything reminds me of you." His words tumbled out, frantic. I thought I could bury it, hide it, but I can't. "I love you, Ethan. I don't care if the world hates me for it. I don't care if my dad never speaks to me again. The only thing I care about is you." Tears stung my eyes, but anger flared just as strong. "You don't get to say that now. Not after weeks of silence. Not after you let me walk away." "I know," he whispered, voice breaking. "But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be better." The line went quiet. My chest heaved, torn between the part of me that still loved him and the part that wanted to protect myself. "I need time," I said finally. "Take all the time you need." He replied softly, "I'll be here, waiting." And then the line went dead, leaving me with nothing but the echo of his voice. The days that followed were chaos. His words played on repeat in my head, fighting against the wall I'd built to keep him out. My friends noticed the change again. "You look like someone's ghosted you and come back to haunt you," Mark said one night. "Something like that," I muttered, Because how do you explain loving someone who broke you, yet still craving the pieces only they could put back together? I started writing again. Not about him. Not directly. But every story, every character, every line of dialogue bled with his shadow. Love and loss, fear and hope, yet all circled back to Liam. And maybe, in some strange way, that was my answer. Because if he could still inspire me, even in absence, maybe it meant he wasn't meant to stay absent. One night, unable to resist anymore, I found myself standing outside his apartment. The hallway smelled the same old paint. Someone's cooking. Faint traces of his cologne lingering like a memory. I almost turned back. Almost convinced myself I was making a mistake. But before I could, the door opened. He froze when he saw me, eyes wide, as if he'd conjured me out of thin air. "Ethan," he breathed. I swallowed, my throat dry. "We need to talk." He nodded quickly, stepping aside to let me in. The apartment was exactly as I remembered, messy. Lived in. Undeniably him. A half-empty coffee mug sat on the counter. A jacket lay draped over the couch. It felt both familiar and foreign, like stepping into a dream I wasn't sure I belonged to anymore. "I meant what I said," he blurted out, breaking the silence. "That night on the phone. I love you, and I'm done hiding it." I stared at him, searching his face for cracks, for lies. But all I saw was truth, raw and unguarded. "Words aren't enough," I said finally. "I need actions." "You'll have them," he promised. His voice shook, but his eyes didn't waver. "Whatever it takes, Ethan. I'll prove it." And for the first time in weeks, a flicker of hope sparked in my chest. Hope is dangerous, but it's also necessary. Over the next few weeks, Liam began to change. Small steps, at first holding my hand in public, even if it was just for a moment. Introducing me to his friends as someone more than just a buddy. Calling me every night, no matter how late, just to tell me he loved me. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of fear, still hesitations in his eyes. But there was also progress. And for the first time, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could survive this. But the true test came when he invited me to dinner at his parents' house. "Are you sure?" I asked, heart pounding. He nodded, determination etched into his face. "It's time." And with those two words, I knew the storm was about to reach its peak. Ethan had never been good at endings. He used to run from them, hide behind sarcasm, or drown them in whiskey. But this time, as the night wrapped itself around the city, he wasn't running. He was standing still, breathing in, and letting himself feel everything. The last few weeks had been a storm of memories, confrontations, and impossible choices. There were moments when he thought he'd lose himself completely. But somehow, against all odds, he had found his way back, not alone, but with Daniel. Daniel's hand was warm in his, steady and grounding. They were walking down the quiet streets of Brooklyn after leaving the small bar where their story had started months ago. The neon lights flickered above, casting shades of blue and red across their faces. Ethan couldn't help but laugh softly at the irony of it all. "This is where it began," he said, his voice low but heavy with meaning. Daniel looked at him, eyes soft, lips curved into a smile that carried 100 untold words. "And where it begins again," he replied. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of promise, of healing, of everything they had been too scared to admit before. Ethan squeezed Daniel's hand tighter. "I used to think I wasn't worthy of this," Ethan confessed, stopping under the glow of a street lamp. His voice shook slightly, but he didn't hide it. "Not of you, not of happiness, I kept punishing myself for things I couldn't change. Daniel stepped closer. So close their foreheads nearly touched. Ethan, you don't have to punish yourself anymore. You've paid enough. You've survived enough. Now, you get to live. The words cracked something open inside Ethan. He felt tears sting his eyes. But this time, he didn't feel weak for it. He felt alive. He leaned forward, closing the distance, and kissed Daniel slow, tender, but burning with all the years of longing and silence they had endured. It wasn't the desperate kiss of people afraid to lose each other. It was steady, gentle, the kind of kiss that promised tomorrow, and the day after, and every day after that. When they pulled apart, Daniel chuckled softly. You know, you're terrible at hiding your feelings. Ethan smirked through his tears. Took you long enough to notice. They kept walking, the city humming around them, but the world felt smaller, safer, like it existed only for them. Ethan thought back to all the nights he had sat in his apartment alone, drowning in guilt, convincing himself he was destined to be miserable. Now, here he was, holding the hand of the man who had seen him at his worst and still stayed. At the pier, they stopped again. The water shimmered under the moonlight, the air filled with salt and distant laughter. Daniel leaned on the railing, pulling Ethan closer. You ever wonder? Daniel began. What would have happened if we hadn't run into each other that night? Ethan exhaled, his chest heavy with gratitude. I'd probably still be drinking alone, lying to myself. And you, maybe you'd still be pretending you didn't care. Daniel smiled, his thumb brushing against Ethan's cheek. Then I guess fate got it right for once. They stayed there, watching the waves crash gently against the docks, their bodies pressed together. Ethan rested his head against Daniel's shoulder, finally allowing himself the peace he had craved for so long. For the first time, the future didn't scare him. Maybe life would throw new storms their way. Maybe the world wouldn't always understand them. But they had each other, and that was enough. More than enough. Ethan closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of Daniel's cologne, memorizing the rhythm of his heartbeat. He smiled softly. One night meant for drinks. He whispered, almost to himself. But a moment changed everything. And with Daniel's arm around him, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.